Well, tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi mahana kia koutou to those in our community who may be joining us online. Yesterday and this morning, elected members have heard from a range of submitters who opted to come in and verbally speak to the council. And we've also read through over 200 submissions that have been received in the second extended part of our annual plan consultation. And before I move into a little bit of scene setting, I also want to say how sad we are that unfortunately our Matariki celebration this evening has had to be cancelled due to the weather, but we must stay safe. So I do want to say, mana, now excuse my pronunciation, I'm on my journey here, mana watia a Matariki. So a very happy Matariki to everyone over this weekend in particular. Hopefully everyone will stay warm and dry. So team, we have been, as I said, in an active meeting, but I do want to just briefly set the scene for what comes next, particularly for those members of the community that may be joining us online so they know how this process works. Now, we're meeting today to make final decisions needed to adopt the 2026-27 annual plan and set the rates for the year ahead. Most of the annual plan decisions were worked through in our earlier hearing and deliberations, which started on the 10th of June and concluded on the 11th of June. At that meeting, Council resolved to hold the average rates increase to 5.9%, while directing further work to reduce or avoid operational borrowing so that the consulted on $4.8 million shortfall within our annual plan consultation can be avoided. But we also chose not to formalise the annual plan at that meeting. Instead, we reopened consultation on specific issues, namely the impact of the latest revaluation on commercial and industrial ratepayers, and whether the commercial rating differential should be adjusted in the 2026-27 financial year. We did that because the certified QV revaluation information arrived extremely late, outside of this council's control, and it was too late for many to have had meaningful consultation with us. I'd also like to inform elected members that we have subsequently met with the Assistant Valuer General to express the impact that this has had on our community. That was emphasised with a great deal and zeal. And we have met with QV as well. These are the two parties that have in part led us to where we are now, and they needed to understand the impact on our community. It has meant, as I said, that some ratepayers had very little time to understand what the proposed rates meant for them in their individual context. So today we are considering the submissions from that further consultation, alongside the related matters in the agenda, including the Hastings and Havelock North CBD targeted rate and the Waipatiki wastewater rating matter. So to be clear, because I do want us to be clear, today we are addressing the adoption of the annual plan. We are deciding the rating differential option for the 26-27 financial year. We are considering the targeted rating matters included in the agenda. And if the annual plan is adopted, we are then setting the rates for the year. We are not reopening the whole annual plan budget. We are not revisiting the average 5.9% rates increase. That was debated in June. We are not undertaking a full review of the rating system today. We cannot do that in this context. And we are not able to make decisions outside of the scope of the consultation and advice before us. The key remaining policy question is whether we retain the current differential settings or make the limited temporary adjustment that was consulted on. It is important to be clear that changing the differential does not reduce Council's overall budget. It changes how that budget is shared between different groups of ratepayers. If one group pays less, another group pays more. We have to be clear about that. That is not pitting ratepayers against each other, it is simply being transparent. We have heard from the commercial and industrial ratepayers that they are facing sharp increases. We've also heard from residential ratepayers concerned that more cost being shifted onto households is too much for them right now. Both concerns are very real and they need to be weighed by us carefully. As we debate, which will happen at the end of this, we're going to have questions first, I will ask that we keep coming back to three things. First, fairness across the whole rating base. Households, businesses, rural ratepayers and others. It's about the entire community. Second, the scope of the process we have run, including the additional consultation provided because certified QV information arrived late. Third, the proper place for bigger structural questions. Many submitters have raised wider issues around differentials, targeted rates, uniform charges, and who benefits from what services. Those matters need proper modelling, options, and community consultation, which I believe is most appropriately addressed through the long-term plan, which we will be moving on to as soon as this process is complete. Today's task is to make the decisions needed to adopt the annual plan and set the rates for 26-27. We need to land in a place that is fair, lawful, practical, and within the scope of the consultation we've undertaken. With that context, I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Allen, who is going to take us through a presentation answering some of the questions that have been raised by elected members after hearing from submitters over the past few days and reading the submission packs. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we've had some pretty consistent themes coming through from the submitters that you've got in your packs, both written and then verbally over the last couple of days as well. A number of those issues surround things like legal compliance, our differential history, have things changed in recent times, temporary adjustments to the differential with an LTP process to follow, which we've discussed, and we'll get into more detail of these. The receipt of QV's data file in the early days, what did we know and what could we have done about that? The process that we would undertake generally around substantive rating policy changes and how you can do that or not in the timeframes that we've got at the moment, and when is the most obvious time to do that, which obviously is around a long-term plan. What are the what's the issues around delaying a rate strike and taking further time for trying to resolve this issue? Can cost cutting be brought into this conversation in a way to help provide some relief? So there are, I guess, a number of the general themes that have come through from the submitters. I'll hand over now to Mr. Watson, who'll begin a presentation and will take you through a number of those issues and a few others with some background. A little bit of it's a repeat of what we talked about in the June 11 council meeting, where we stepped through some of the, the history around differentials. We're just going to sort of bring that back to the fore again this time, and a little bit of and show some of those impacts that have happened with revaluations in the past as well, and hopefully in a way to lead you to a more informed place for your decision making. So I hand over to Mr. Watson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. If we go, and the first thing we want to talk about, because it's been talked about a lot over the last couple of days, is the revaluation and the sort of timelines that we were all sort of working in. Now, we knew, because this was the first revaluation since the cyclone, it was going to be a complex issue. So we actually started early. We had an initial meeting with QV, with the members of the Valuer General staff and ourselves in March, just to get things moving. And then in April, we were actually communicated that we would get final information, the final file in January, and this would be certified in early February. Very much in line with timelines in terms of preparing anything, making adjustments as necessary before we got to any consultation on the draft annual plan or adoption of the draft annual plan. And just to be clear, the valuation date is August 25, and it's always preferable to be as close as to the valuation date when you're getting these final files, because as we've now experienced, the economies, things can significantly sort of change. We then, on the 18th of December, we got a notification that QV had gone to the Valuer General and asked for a delay. They weren't ready. They had actually lost some key staff and were not in a position to actually get the valuation information ready when they expected. We were not part of that initial conversation. We just got a mail to outline that. And then in February, we got what was very much a draft, an incomplete file of data from QV. Now, we could see from that incomplete file of data that, yes, there have been some movements. So the initial indications were there then that there was a movement from residential to commercial in terms of increases in land values. But the file was so incomplete. It was not certified. We could not have done anything in detail with that file. We have actually had discussions with the Office of the Valuer General. They actually confirmed the same thing. We could not have used that initial file to do anything substantive with. We've even had legal advice to say if we had used that to give indications without having a certified file, we could have been at the risk of speculating on values. So all we did in the CE's report on the 19th of February, we gave that initial indication. On the 23rd of March, we got another file, again draft, from QV. We were planning for their audit with the Valuer General at the 30th of March. But we got that information after we'd published the draft consultation document, after we had drafted the council papers. In those papers, we said we do not have the valid file for this valuation. We are using all the rates information based on the only valid certified data that we had, which was the earlier 2022 file. Now, that file actually failed the audit. So the Valuer General actually asked for more work to be done. So again, it was an incomplete file that we were working with. Then on the 1st of May, we did actually get that we were being certified, the data was being certified. On the 4th of May, we got the final file. And then that's when we were able to then look at, with detail, down to property level, the implications. So that's the history with the revaluations, how we've actually ended up in this position. If we then go to, there's been a lot of talk on the legalities of what we've actually done. And yes, when council is preparing rates information to go out for consultation, we do have to use valid data. Now, the only complete, certified, valid land data available when we went out for a draft consultation was the 2022 reval. So our legal advice is clear. We have acted very reasonably in taking that position, and we informed the community that's what we were doing. When we got the full data available and the actual impact was understood, again, we have acted reasonably. We have gone out for further consultation. We've explained the revaluation impact, and we've asked for feedback on two options. On the differentials, the 3 to the 2.75. Now again, that was deemed as being reasonable. Now if we want to play within the space of the 3 and the 2.75 differentials, we can do that under consultation. If we want to move further than that, and we've heard a lot of the presenters over the last couple of days asking us to do that, that very much becomes a risk and judgment call. So maybe ask Scott just to explain legal side of that, of making those judgment calls?
There are probably, there's 2 points I wanted to make. The first one is that, you know, we've had advice throughout this process, and that advice is that the process we've undertaken is reasonable in the context. So you can have that assurance. The second point is the scope question. When we talked to the public, we gave them 2 options about this, and that sets up a scope within which everybody is safe to play. Everybody knows that that range was being considered and have had the opportunity to tell you their thoughts on it. If you go outside that scope, you import a risk. That risk is that somebody might allege that the opportunity to comment wasn't given and the outcome could have been different if they had. Right? The further you depart from that range, the greater that risk becomes. If you think of an example that's a long way away from it, that's obvious, right? The closer you get to the range you've consulted on, the less the risk is, right? But it's still there. Right? So that's a judgment call for you to consider. I'd suggest you keep in mind, well, what have people had the opportunity to talk to us about? How well do I understand the community's views? Those sort of things. Keep that in your mind, and that'll help guide you about, well, to what degree are we happy to go into that risky area or not? But any tread past the 2.75 does bring that risk live.
But again, just recapping, this one slide you will recognise from our June discussions, just showing the various movements over the period. The blue line is residential, the red line is the CBD, and you can see probably for this reevaluation, we have the biggest gaps between the various categories of properties than we've had over the period. But again, just showing the averages, sort of sitting there with the average rates increase being 9.2, the commercial CBD being at the 7, and then residential being at 11. That is the information that we showed sort of previously, sort of here. And then trying to put that with not just the CBD, all the various categories, and with the industrial there and the hot farming. And you can see earlier we had some spikes in the hot farming as well. But again, with the commercial, just the gaps this year are far more impacted than we've seen over the last number of valuations that Council has undertaken. Now, another key topic that's come up sort of through the last couple of days has been differentials. So again, we're just going through the differentials that we have and then sort of getting into where they have come from, because there has been a little bit of talk on sort of timelines and sort of where they came. So these are the differentials that we sort of have. The key ones here are the 3, the 2.75 and the 2.35 for the CBD commercial, other commercial, and then non-urban peripheral, which is really industrial sort of there. And everything's based from residential being seen as being factor of differential of 1. So then, this is when we did the review. And the last time we did a review, because it is a major undertaking of Council to actually sort of do this. I think this one was about 18 months. We had basically a working party overseeing all this as well. But they've gone into all the different areas of Council business, looking at the impacts on the various communities to then come up with the differentials that we had. And we came in with, as a result of that work, we actually said, Council said, we will go on a journey. We will go on a journey and we will start to move, because back then CBD was actually up at 350 when we did this review. There was a pathway to take it down to 270 at the end of that 2019-2020. When it got to 2016-2017, and then the revaluation that came in 2017-18, what was actually seen was that the revaluation was moving the burden back to residentials because the residential values were going up. And that's what the differentials essentially were planned to do. So council took a decision after consultation. They took a decision after consultation to then stop moving the differentials. This was how it was basically seen in terms of the consultation process. We got the feedback, and then that was agreed and adopted sort of by council. And essentially, that was the last time that we have reviewed the differentials from the rates perspective. And again, what has come through is we need to be doing that again. That has been heard, I think, loud and clear from the community over the last days as well, and in the submissions. So if we sort of put that's the sort of history and now where we are today, we've had our hearings, we are looking to make decisions on adopting the annual plan and setting the rates for 26-27. Now we have some very key timelines that then sort of link into that. We would like to get our first rates instalment on the 28th of August. That's moved a week because of the delay from the 21st. To do that, we need to get rates notices out to the ratepayers by the 31st of July. Now, there are statutory timelines in there we use in terms of delivering and putting out our rates notices, because we only have 27% of ratepayers who actually get their notices via email. So a lot of this is post. It is done from Australia. So it just adds that little bit more time to be able to do that. And there's work that we need to do in the background between when the rates are set and then being able to give the specific files to our service provider. If we do not hit those timelines, then we have an expectation as council of getting in over 30 million from our first rates instalment. We would either need to stop delivering services or borrow that 30 million. If we borrow it, then that puts more burden in terms of interest costs, more burden on that needs to be paid. So we would like to avoid that. As well as being a challenge for council in terms of funding, it also then to the ratepayers, it condenses the timeline that they have to pay the full year's rate. So that would sort of squeeze the time between first instalment and second instalment. Again, that just puts more pressure on our community at probably one of the worst times. So it's really important, if we can, we actually make the decisions today to avoid those practical challenges. They're not legal issues, they're practical challenges for council. If we then look to the future, we have committed to review the differentials as part of the LTP. We are committing to look at the SUPs, the separately used inhabited parks. And again, that came up from presentations yesterday, especially in relation to the CPD and different properties. In terms of future valuations, because a lot of this has stemmed from timing, we have a commitment from the OVG, from QV, to have Hastings prioritised early in the next revaluation. That means we should be able to get all the data certified file prior to the end of the year that the valuation is undertaken in. They're a little bit concerned with that one, so they have documented the intent to have it certified by the end of February, but practically they think we can actually get it in before the end of that calendar year that the valuations are there. So that's what we wanted to present, and then now sort of happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr Watson. All right, I'm going to open the floor for questions. I'll come first to councillor Milmine.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Graham. Just, are you aware of how many of the commercial and industrial properties have filed for an objection to the evaluation?
Through you, Chair. There was 143 of commercial industrial properties that put in an objection out of, I think, 1,640. So around 9% of them have objected.
Okay, thank you. And assuming that they would all be asking for a reduction?
Through you, Chair. Surprisingly, no, not all have. Some have actually asked for an increase, a small portion. Some have just asked for further clarification. The vast majority have asked for a reduction, with the average reduction requested being 25%.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is going to be around probability and statistics. And the 4th of February and the 23rd of March, the pre-audit, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is a very small percentage of properties failed the audit, and it was due to the cyclone-related properties. Could we have been given information with a 90% or greater probability that it would, with plus or minus 2%, and an idea of what some of these non-cyclone related industrial commercial properties were facing compared to residential properties? Could we have been given that information and gone out and said, within plus or minus 2%, this is what will happen?
So, councillor, I'll allow one response to that question, but what I do want to do is focus us on what today's meeting is, which is actually not looking into that process. It's about what we decide to do going forward. I am very happy, though, to take away an action that we, again, if we're not satisfied today, ask the team to come back to us and give us further information on what you're talking about. I just want to keep us on track today in terms of we have to decide our annual plan today. So I'll come to Mr Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I can't make a comment on the 90% or the 1 to 2%, the statistical probabilities. And we certainly were not in a position to talk about any specific properties. The only thing we could have again been saying is there is going to be a movement between the residential to the commercial and industrial sort of properties. But again, the implication is all around the overall relativities. So again, you need that final file to be able to actually get the totality of the relativities, especially when you put in horticultural in there as well.
Okay,
But
so
we really couldn't have gone much further.
I'll refocus us now, team, onto the decisions that are facing us today. So, Councillor Watkins, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just in terms of the 0.25 reduction in the commercial sector, is there any other viable options other than transferring that saving to the residential ratepayer?
I'll try. So that is a very complicated process that we sort of work. I think the fundamental principle is no, there's not, because as part of our revenue and financing policy, which is one of our most significant policies within council, we are clear that all the requirements of funding that go for the general rate have to be spread by land value. So we can't make decisions without then sort of going back and spread that over without changing that policy. And if we wanted to change such a significant policy, that would likely be a consultation process. But it is quite complicated in the way we actually then take the different land values and then allocate the various general rates costs to those land values is extremely complicated. We can prepare some work of that if councillors would be interested, but it is quite a complicated process and ultimately still leads us that we would need to be looking at a revenue financing policy.
I'm happy with that reply.
Mr Allen would like to follow on.
I think that very quickly, the key point to that is that any changes to your rating and financing policy are significant. The long-term plan is the time to do that, where you actually have the time to work through all the iterations. Because you change one thing, it affects someone else. So that needs to be worked through thoroughly. That's the time to do that. If you want that investigated further, that is something that could be looked at with the LTP, but it's really difficult to do it on the fly.
I'll come now to Councillor Noel Lustig.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Mr. Pickle. If later on today we decide to stick with the differential 3, what are your thoughts for what this area will look like in the next 2 or 3 years? How much growth will there be?
Through you, Your Worship, very difficult to speculate, other than to.
It's just your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are a lot of there's a lot of things at play in the economy more than rates, and we've heard that from the submitters. But clearly, one of the things that's been behind the last decade of growth in Hastings has been kind of certainty and a confidence to invest from our productive. And I think that's been a constant theme that's come through, certainly from our commercial, property owners around continuing to maintain confidence to invest.
Yeah, if I could do a second question.
Please.
Probably Nigel or Graham. If we were to look at changing the differential to 2.35, what implication do you see this having on the residential ratepayers?
Are you meaning specifically in terms of dollar impacts or just in general?
Yes, but you don't need to be specific with it. But in your opinion, is that too much to ask?
Well, my opinion, that doesn't really matter because that's the council judgment.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you as an advisor.
Mr. Smith was talking about.
Yeah.
That's the judgment call that is there, and again, it will be depending on which parts of the residential community you talk to. Some will be able to absorb that, some will not. Mm-hmm. So very difficult for councillors, officers to give advice on that, because that's very much the councillor's judgment call.
That is the difficult question before us today, Councillor. The best our officers can do is provide us information to inform our decision making, but it's our call.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'll come now to Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we've got the differentials is what we're discussing today, but over the last 2 days we've heard a lot of submissions about other factors that we need to be discussing, and I'm just wondering where the opportunity to talk about those in more depth will be.
Are you specifically talking about the full breadth of targeted rates, Councillor?
No, differentials, total budget. And there were a lot of things that were raised from the commercial sector in their submissions.
Our total budget was consulted on as part of the initial phase of the annual plan.
I know. I'm saying we're not revisiting that today.
No.
But I think as councillors, we want to have a discussion about that at some time.
And that's absolutely the position of the LTP.
So when would that start?
The process for that is scheduled to start quite quickly, but I'll come to the Chief.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, I mean, the LTP process, that is going to be the work of the council. You've got some, choices to make around the overall breadth of activity, funding, levels of service. As an example, there's quite a big program of work that will get inside of that in terms of your capital program, around a series of reviews that all go to basically the total quantum of rates.
Yeah. So that's going to be like in the next month we'll start all that?
Over the bulk of that work has to be done this
So the first thing we're needing to get out of the way, councillor, which I know everyone will be conscious we're focused on, is we need to get through these reforms as well. We've got the 9th of August timeframe, and that's been all-consuming. But the officers have been working at pace on the directions we've set so far as this table and information we want to inform our LTP. So the body of work that then becomes the focus after the reforms is very much the LTP. So there's going to be no delay. We want to get dug into it straight away, but we do have competing priorities right now.
Yeah, I accept that, but there were serious issues raised which we need to discuss, and I don't think we can delay.
And we're not. I'm not
and
proposing we delay.
Make today's decision and put that to rest for 6 months or something like that.
That's not the intention, councillor.
Okay. So my second question is, we have the CBD rates and a proposal of 2.75, and we hear back that 2.35 would be what that sector would want. How much impact does the targeted rate, if the targeted rate for the CBD is not there, what sort of factor does that factor into it?
Mr. Allen, is that something you can answer? We can give you a moment.
I'm just trying to find the presentation from last time. It does vary depending on the scale and size of the property. The Hastings CBD targeted rate is the street upgrade program, and what's on the table is to pause that, and we've had positive feedback from the Business Association that they're supportive of that relief. We understand that the impact on that program can be managed with a 1-year pause in the funding. It does vary from a few $100s to a few $1,000s per property through the CBD if that rate is paused. I haven't got the numbers in front of me right at the moment.
Okay, if you want to keep marinating on that, Councillor Corbyn, you're very welcome to. I can come back to you. Councillor Milmine.
Thank you, through you, Worship. One of our submitters yesterday mentioned that the Napier rating was a lot cheaper or a lot less. Just wondering if they have had their evaluation and if it's comparing, if it's comparable or if that may be going to increase.
Yeah, through the chair. So the Napier revaluation cycles, I think one was last year. So they're on a similar, QV and Hawke's Bay do Napier 1 year, Hastings the next, and then Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa the following year. It's just a revolving cycle through that process. Without knowing the specifics of the properties that were being referenced to, it's hard to know what other factors are there that are creating that rating differential for those properties. My understanding is the Napier commercial industrial differential is 2.7.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll come now to Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. My question is about differentials. I want to stick to the agenda.
Thank you.
I love numbers, as you know. I mean, this is my stuff. And man, am I confused. And I just wonder what information, because we've been given various charts and things over the last few weeks showing the effect of changing from 3 to 2.75. But somehow, amongst all this, I seem to have got lost because we heard submissions from so many people, and the numbers didn't seem to be the same as the numbers that we have been given by council, what the effect would be on the average ratepayer, the effect on the average business,
I think therein lies the challenge, councillor. Averages is where it doesn't line up. What we heard over the past few days was individual property impacts.
Exactly. But my question is, what information have we got here and now that we can throw up on the screen so we can actually see the effect of the proposed change from 3 to 2.75 on an average commercial rate, or maybe broken into some sort of categories for property values, some domestics on the same sort of thing? Because I actually don't feel I'm...
If you give us one moment, I think there's something prepared earlier for you, councillor. Here we go.
Well, I was hoping for. I've still got another question after this.
Okay.
Oh my God, I can't read it.
Okay, in which case we can potentially pause and print if we need to, but we might come to other questioners first and come back to you,
Well,
councillor.
could I ask my second question? I would like a printed copy because that's exactly what I'm looking for. I've never been given that. I asked yesterday, one of the major submitters for some more information on their rates, the differentials and so on. I understand that information has arrived. Will we be getting an answer from our officers relative to their reply to my request yesterday? Does that make
Sorry,
sense?
can you refresh my memory which submitter?
Handbag.
And so just bearing in mind that they're also in rating area 2, which is not the differential we're looking at changing with this decision.
That's true, but they made a submission and I sort of was challenging it yesterday and I just would like some quick clarification on were the numbers that they were giving us right or wrong, because we get influenced by all these presentations and
So what I'll do, councillor, is I will let the staff just take that away, and in our break they will have a look at it, I'm sure, and perhaps they can talk to you in the break too and get some more
I'll
specifics.
get answers to both those.
That will be the intention for sure.
That's great, that's what I
Thank
wanted.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson, I'm not sure if you want to speak to what's on screen. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. This is what we've done, we've taken our average property that we actually use in our consultation documents.
Can I just make sure you're near a microphone so our community can hear you too? Thank you.
Apologies. We've taken the standards, the average household that we actually put on when we do the consultation documents, and then we've basically, we've then sort of gone, well, this is the land value movements, where the rates were last year, what we've come in with, option 1, option 2 being the differential drop to 2.75, and then option 3 and option 4. So option 4 is the 2.35 that we have heard a number of the submitters over the last couple of days ask us to go down to. So then if you're looking at, say, Flaxmere, then you're essentially saying a $51 difference to go from the 3 to the 2.35 for that average house. I mean, we just can't get over it enough, it's the average house. If you then look at what it does for some of the commercial, then we sort of see Hastings CBD retail, we see a drop coming in. Havelock North, we see quite a big drop coming in for that property that we've identified. If we look at horticulture, then we're seeing maybe a larger increase than maybe the residentials sort of coming in. So 4.1 going up to sort of 4.33. So almost a 200 difference that the horticulture would need to pay if we went from the 3 down to a differential of 2.335. So these are basically what we go to, and then obviously it's just the mathematics to work out the individual movements sort of there. If you wanted to look at it in terms of percentages, then again, we're going sort of from 5.3 up to 6.7 year over year increase in comparison to the 25-26 sort of rates. Havelock North goes from, which would have been a reduction, going up to a 1.9% increase. If you look at horticulture, then you're going from a 12% increase up to a 17% increase if you wanted to look at it from a percentage movement rather than actual dollar movement there. We will get those printed out so you can have them in front of you.
Thank you for doing that work. That's great to have available. I'll come now to Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Yep, thank you, and through your worship, can you, I think Mr Smith might be the one for this, can you just repeat please, if the decision was, or it's considered to go from 2.75 down to 2.35, the legality? Could you just, I think you touched on that in your, could you just regurgitate that, please?
I can't give you a number where it's safe to go.
Yeah.
As soon as you go beyond the 2.75, you're in the category where you're introducing risk into the process. Right? The further you go, the greater that risk you're introducing. The questions you should ask yourself are, well, have people been given the opportunity to have their say about what we're contemplating to do? how well do I know the views? And it would be good if that sort of position was reached, if the resolution recorded why you thought you were in a position to make those decisions. But as soon as you go past the 2.75, you're starting to introduce that risk.
Yeah, so thank you. Through you, Your Worship, so what you're saying is if it went to 2.35, you're saying that because we've gone out on the option of the 2.75, not the others, that the community could actually object to that, challenge that quite strongly.
Well, there's two components to that. There's the risk that somebody might bring a challenge. It might be horticultural interests, for example. There's also the risk that you're not doing things right. And that's not really a legal risk. It's a more of a principled risk that the law is intended to reflect. Right? The reality of some risks in terms of the ratepayers as a group is that for each individual ratepayer, the changes are smaller. So your risk of challenge is less, but that doesn't make it any less or more right. So I think the question is to ask yourselves, for instance, if you decided, well, we wanted to make it 2.70, right, the risks would be very small, right? But the further you go, the greater those risks that you're taking are.
Yep, thank you. So through Your Worship, it's absolutely clear in my mind, if it was down to 2.35, because we haven't consulted on that specifically, it does open risk, but as to what risk that is unknown. And second follow-up question, if you like.
Please.
But can Your Worship, some of the submitters seem to indicate that we didn't consult on the 165 million, yes or no answer that we did as part of the annual plan process.
Through Your Worship, yes, we do.
Yes, thank you. And my final question through your Worship is, is there a likelihood that we're setting a precedent? So in other words, if valuations go down specifically, that we could actually say, oh, I don't like that, we could actually overturn this in the future year and go 3.5. I'm concerned about precedent setting in this. Sorry, we'll go.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Through Your Worship, as much as you're making a decision to adjust and reflect the impacts on a certain sector from this revaluation, it doesn't create a legal precedent that's what you must do each time that happens. But as you lead into the next revaluation cycle, you might get a different outcome and a different set of ratepayers will be affected by it. Because you made this decision this time does not set an absolute precedent that you must do that next time. The circumstances will need to be considered by the council when they consider that, if that request is there or the impacts are such that certain ratepayers are affected significantly more than others. But it would certainly be a judgment call for council at the time. There is nothing stopping the community looking back at 2026 and going, we made that decision at that time, therefore you shall make this decision this time. It'll be a decision of council.
The quick follow-up,
Please.
Your Worship, so it is possible that a ratepayer may have a request for us to consider putting up a differential. Yes or no, that's simply.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a sort of segue, we on the LT Premier is that, through the Worship, is we're talking about risk and the risk in, we have the, what I'm trying to say is we're talking about risk in a distribution manner when we distribute differentials around to residential, yada yada. But is there a risk to absorption? So if we absorb the costs ourselves as a council.
Are you asking what the impact would be if we were of a mind to absorb that rather than?
Yeah, because we had the conversation about we run the risk of them coming back to us and saying that, well, we weren't consulted on this, we weren't da-da-da. But that's around distribution. But in my mind, I'm thinking, why aren't we talking about absorbing?
So absorbing would mean reducing our budget, which would mean greater cuts than what we've already agreed to look at. I will come to the team. Do you have any idea what that would look like? Do you need some time?
I'll try and answer the question first because there's actually quite a technical sort of question, as we sort of alluded to earlier. Our revenue and finance policy basically has us distributing our general rates across all areas. So we can't make a call just as to say we're going to make savings here and give that to one group. So if we were to make, say, savings of 10 million, then based on how everything's distributed, 63% of that would actually go to the residential ratepayers, and then about 15 to 16% would go to commercial and industrial, because that's how the average rates are sort of split.
Got it. Rates rebate.
Thank you, councillor Daniel. Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to segue from Deputy Mayor to Councillor Daniel. And I am wanting to explore that absorption a little more. Doesn't have to be answered right now if the officers need to bring information, because the submitters were heavy on the 2.35. What does, if information can be brought back, what does, and I hear Mr. Smith around the legalities, if a 0.15 is targeted and a 0.25 is absorbed, what does that cost modelling look like if we're going for it? This is a really hard decision for us to all consume, absorb everything. So I'm looking at considerations. I haven't predetermined, but I just need to know, what does that look like? Going from 2.75 to 2.35, if there was a targeted drop for 0.15 to residential and 0.25 absorption to council. Now, we have to make decisions based on information, and I see there's a bit of, I'd like that information, thank you.
Officers.
I'm just actually trying to think how we
Yeah.
could actually pull that information together. So apologies if my body language was taken in a different way. We can look at that. I think we just need to have quite a bit of a think on how we would structure that sort of to come back.
I'm very happy for officers to take time over the break to see if they can pull that together. What I will just frame though, team, is absorption means more cuts. We've already set a task for our staff saying find 4.8 million where we don't know where it's coming from already. Any further cuts is adding to that burden, and we would have to have a degree of confidence that we could do that without triggering, I guess, a risk that the community says you didn't consult with us about these bigger cuts. And it's a very on-the-fly major change. So I just will caution that, but we will see what the team can pull together, because I do want to make sure people have the information they need, but we do need to proceed with caution.
Can I just have a follow-up on that, Your Worship?
Yes.
I'm just asking questions that our submitters ask, and if we ask submitters to come in and submit, these are questions that I ask majority of the submitters is, where do they see that cut being absorbed? And so these are my follow-up questions from the questions that I asked all the submitters. It doesn't mean I'm predetermined. I just want clarity on what that might look like. Thank you.
Absolutely, and that's why we will ask the officers to see what they can do. Mr. Allen, you look like you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, we'll come back after lunch and be in a position to hopefully answer that question. I think just off first blush, anything of that nature, given the current, I guess, construct of our rating policy, would be quite challenging, extremely challenging to put into place. But we'll come back after lunch and hopefully be in a position to be able to present that back to you in a more fulsome way.
And I'll just tack on a question for myself in that process too. Any risk to credit ratings with any of these proposals as well? Just as something to cast over that as well, because anything that risks that could have significant impact on our community in terms of interest rates. So I'll come now to Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. This question is sort of related, but it does go back to QV valuations and the 140 that have challenged the evaluation. Is the time window open for more to lodge challenges, or is that closed?
through you, Your Worship, no, the window for objections have closed.
Yeah.
So, and the conversation that we had with QV, they expect to do those objections over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Sorry, I missed that.
Over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
For the objections to be.
So if those people, 140 have challenged and come back with a lower valuation, do we have to absorb anything? I mean, how is that handled in cutting up the pie?
Is that something that can be answered now, or do you want to bring that back with the information after lunchtime?
So that, through you,
Right.
Chair. If the valuations are upheld, seeing as we're now post-adoption of the, assuming we have adopted the annual plan and we have set the rates, then that would be a cost to council that we would take. I would also, again, just feedback from the Valuer General, they would be very surprised if the majority of the objections were actually upheld. Based on the work that they have done, based on the audit work that the Valuer General has done and all the work processes that have been reviewed, they would be very surprised, and that's certainly their view.
Come now to Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm still about differentials. I've read all the submissions. I seem to have spent half my waking hours since last Friday, sort of winding through them. And it seemed to me, and this is not a speech, but just to get the question right.
As long as we get to the question quickly,
no.
Councillor, there's others.
Yeah, well, it seemed to me that the majority of submitters, the commercial submitters, actually did seem to favour the 2.75 as against the 3. I mean, that was very strong. Subsequently, in oral and written submissions, people were asking for more. What percentage, do we know what percentage of the submitters actually opted for the 2.75 or said it was acceptable?
That's
I
in
can
your,
see somebody.
that's in your agenda pack, Councillor. So,
I know, but I don't know where to look for it.
so
Thank
if you look on the first, I think it's page 8, you will find that information in there.
Okay. Thank you. That was the information I was looking for. I knew it was there somewhere.
Okay, so I'll come now to Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Some properties are experiencing a reduction in the rating levels. Do we know what the total cost of that is to us? And are we in a position to resolve to set a floor, a rates increase floor of, say, 0% or 1% or 2% to ensure that nobody's experiencing a negative or too small of a rise, because every...
Point of order, Your Worship, I don't think that's a relevant question. That's how the rating system works. So I don't like where the council is going with that question in terms of a community.
What I'll invite you to do, Councillor Ratcliffe, is at the break, have a chat with staff about how the current rating system works, because we're not looking to change the entire rating system.
No,
and fundamentally putting a limit to how far they can go down would change the current system. So,
that's the answer I needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so I'll come now to Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question in relation to the slide there. Are these additional options ring-fenced to DRA1?
Yeah, very simply, yes.
So can I ask why?
In terms of, I'm confused.
Why is this ring-fenced to DRA1 and not including DRA2? In terms of spreading, if we were going to move the 0.25 from commercial business to residential, why would that not include residential and DRA2?
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. The general rate component is split into two areas, RA1 and RA2. So we have the total general rate requirement, and then we split it between the percentage of where the land values are. So they have, in RA2, they have different differentials. So in RA2, residential isn't the baseline, the Hawke farming is the baseline, that's the one. Residential's got a 0.65 and commercial has a 1.65. They're not part of the rate takes, they don't have the three, they have a commercial in RA2 is 1.65 of the RA2 requirement. So that it doesn't impact on these changes because there's.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I'll come now to councillor O'Keefe.
Kia ora, koro matua. I'm really struggling here. So how do I, Henare O'Keefe, determine what's a fair share for both? You know, what's the evidence that I need that is going to be fair to both? How do I decide that?
So that's the information that we've all requested to date, councillor. and
What's
is on
the
our
evidence
agenda.
that's needed? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and that's for us to determine. So what the officers have provided us is with information like what's on screen right now and the historic, how the rating system's been developed, and it is for this table to determine what you're asking.
Even that is complicated. I just need help. I just need it simplified, you know. That's me.
Okay, well, I'll
It
invite
might
you
be
to...
simple to you guys, but it ain't simple to me.
So, councillor, in the lunch break, if you'd like to talk to officers, I'm sure they can answer any other questions you've got, if there's any further information, but I will encourage it to be brought back to the table so the community can hear that as well. We don't do anything in secret here. Okay, are there any other questions at this stage, team? Look, I want to acknowledge this is complex because this is not what we had anticipated doing as part of the annual plan. A full rating review will allow us as part of the LTP to dive into every aspect of our rating system. What we've got before us today is we've heard from our community that a unique situation has happened where land values have deviated in quite a sharp spike, both up and down between residential and commercial and industrial. And it has created a truly unique situation. As a response to that, during our last hearings, we decided that we would look at whether or not the community was open to a form of relief using just the differential, because that's a way we can do a temporary form of relief before a full rating review. But this is tricky, as you will see from the submissions we've read. Given there's no more questions at this point, what I'm going to do is suggest that we break for... Oh, sorry, councillor Corbyn.
Yeah, sorry, it's a late question. I find that chart really helpful, but I go back to my earlier question. If we take the targeted rate for the Hastings CBD out, what does it leave as the rating value?
So we'll see if the staff can work on that over the lunch break and see if they can bring something back. Is that possible, Mr Allen?
It's certainly possible. Well, I can do it now if you like.
Lovely.
I found the numbers. So effectively, the Hastings CBD targeted rate collects $320,000 from those properties within that area. That's 337 properties. They average around $1,000 per property is what those targeted properties are paying for the Hastings CBD targeted rate. And that ranges from up to $16,000. So the biggest property within the CBD pays $16,000 towards that targeted rate. But on average, across all 337 properties, it's just over $1,000 per property.
Okay. Right, we've got some information that's been requested. We've got some printouts that have been requested. I'm going to suggest that we break for lunch now. I'm actually going to take direction from the staff in a moment as to how long they need to pull that information together. So at the moment, just assume we're only taking half an hour, but we may extend that if the officers need more time, because I want to make sure that we've got what we need in front of us to move into debate and deliberations. You're also welcome when we come back from break to let me know if there are additional questions you'd like to ask. We will, of course, allow those. So we'll break now for lunch.
Can we have that table left on the screen, please? No? Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, team, well, we'll reconvene our meeting now, and I know that the officers have been very busy over the break trying to pull together the information that was requested before we broke for lunch. So just to outline the format from here, what we'll do is in a moment I'll come to the officers to take us through answers and information to the questions that were asked before lunch. Then what we'll do is once those are satisfied and once we've exhausted any other questions, we'll then move through like we did at the last annual plan hearing, the submissions in blocks. So if you do have any specific questions on written submissions that have been put forward, I'll just be saying, right, we're going to look at submissions 1 to 44. Are there any questions? And you can just yell out if there are. And apart from that, we will be good to go. So I'm going to hand over now to the team up the front to answer the pre-submitted questions, and I'll give you forewarning before we start going through the submission blocks. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to recap on the two questions that we had prior to lunch that we asked for a bit more time to consider from Councillor Daniel around, can we absorb the rates not collected if council was to move from the 3 times differential to a 2.35 differential and not allocate that out to the balance of the rate payers. And to Councillor Te Ao Skipworth, so variation of that where that would be partially absorbed and partially offset against or allocated across the other rate payers, that's being horticulture, farming, residential and the like. So in short, our current rating policy and revenue financing policy does not allow us to not collect rates from what has been calculated as the general rate component. So when we work through our budgets, as you know, the level of external revenue is calculated, total expenses is calculated. If some of those activities be funded from debt or funded from reserves, not that we have, council has many reserves left, but what falls out is a rate requirement to fund an activity. That amount is then set within the general rate. That is then allocated across all the rate payers based on the defined differentials and the like. So if we make a comparison, I think the question's been posed as well as, well, we had a debt-funded allocation of council's rates in the annual plan. Why can't we do that with this? And I think that the key difference there is that that consideration was made prior to setting the general rate pool. So if we were to make a change, and as much as the rating policy does not allow us to not collect the full amount of general rates and not allocate it across all rating properties, council, if it was of a mind, could amend that policy going forward. Now, that would take some time. It would require consultation with the community, and I think the other key component amongst all of that is that you would be collecting less rates than what you have signed off on in your June 11 council meeting. So again, that would need to be reconsidered as well. So again, through your worship, so for those reasons, whilst those options are well considered, the way that our current rating policy is structured means that it's very difficult, or if impossible, under the current regime to put in place without further consultation and amendment to that policy. Now, that's also not to say that you couldn't look at that with the long-term plan. If that was something that you wanted considered, we've already made that commitment, and you've already signalled as well that through the long-term plan we will be re-looking at differentials and having a much more thorough review of those. Things like stormwater won't be in council's domain beyond this current financial year, and therefore we do need to recalculate what those differentials are, and also the opportunity to take into account the effects of this revaluation as well. So that more substantive piece of work is coming, and I think the key message with that then is whatever you decide today around any adjustment or not to the differentials is an adjustment for this financial year only. The LTP provides you with the opportunity to reset and recalculate the differentials following a much more robust process than what we've been able to provide in this short time frame. So hopefully that answers that question, Your Worship.
I will look to the councillors who asked those questions for an indication of whether or not that answers their question. Councillor Daniel.
I think, Your Worship, no it does, and I do want to note that we've talked about policy changes through the LTP and things like that. And I think that is something that we need to actually start doing, especially with a lot of the consultation did talk about some type of policy changes, and I'm glad to hear that that's a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Councillor Teo Skipworth, does that satisfy your questioning?
Satisfies the questioning, not the determination.
No. No, unfortunately, it's not that simple. Thank you, Councillor. Were there any other questions that we were needing to answer over the break, team? I've lost track. I'm looking to the officers here. No, that we covered your... okay, I'll open up the floor. Are there any other questions that have surfaced in your thinking over the break, councillors? No, it's still as clear as mud, I can tell from people's faces, and that's not because we don't understand what's happening, it's because this is a tricky situation. Okay, so what we will now do is we will move into reviewing the blocks, in blocks, the written submissions. I know that everyone has fully read the submissions, so what I'm just simply inviting you to do is to shout out if there's a particular submission you have a question about. I'm not looking for comments, elected members. I'm looking for any specific information you think needs to go back to submitters that's not general, that has to go back to everyone, or any questions you have that have come out of specific submissions. So I just want to be clear on that. And given how much rifling is going on, we might take this in smaller blocks than I was initially anticipating. But Councillor Corbyn, first of all.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question for myself, but there are a number of points made in the submissions that were out of scope of what we're deciding today.
Yes.
How will they be answered by council?
Excellent question. So I'll come to the officers to consider that, because I know we often have broad responses when things are out of scope. Do we have some thoughts on that, team? Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Through Your Worship, so this additional consultation that has been undertaken has provided quite a significant increase in workload for a small number of staff that generally respond to annual plan submissions. So the more substantive annual plan submission process you went through, Mr. Verhoeven's currently in the process of responding to those submitters. Given the nature of this consultation, we hadn't proposed going back to every submitter with a response. However, there might be some individuals that require a more targeted response, and we can do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Councillor Corbyn.
So that raises the question is, how do we decide which ones we respond to and which ones we don't?
That's for us to decide, Councillor. And I guess it's just bearing in mind that the more we task the staff with doing, like if we instruct them to respond to everyone, they will do that, but other work will have to be set aside while they do that. We do have limited resource, and this is a special consultative process basically that we've gone through, or an extra consultation we've gone through. It is unusual. Okay, team, I'm going to start moving through these in blocks. So we'll take submission number 1 through to 20. And I'll just pause to give everyone a chance to flick. By the way, if you find one when I've moved on that you want to come back to, I'm not going to say we can't, so just sing out. And I do know that a significant investment is made by elected members in post-it notes and highlighters over the course of this. I acknowledge you all. So we'll now move from submission number 21, and I'm actually going to take it through to 44. While you're having a look, I did have one noted myself, which I just need to find the notes on. I note that submission number 44 could benefit with some information regarding the delay in revaluations being the reason for the extra consultation. There seemed to be some confusion as to why we were doing extra consultation. So if we could go back to that submitter with that, that would be helpful. I'm hoping that won't create too much work for the team. Okay, given I see no lights on yet, we will move submission number 45 through to 65, or we'll take 66 in fact, because 65 and 66 are by the same submitter. Again, while elected members are madly rifling through their papers, submission number 57, I note that the submission seems to think that we have changed the differentials significantly in recent history, and I just wonder if some information going back to that submitter, concise, outlining that's what the case is actually, would be very helpful. Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to this submission, I think it would be also good if we do notify them of we are reviewing the policies.
Thank you.
Just giving them that reassurance if you note the comment last.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, team,
Sorry, just following on from Councillor Daniel, is there just a base response that all of if everyone could receive something along those lines, I think it would be really beneficial, because a few people did talk about a review, if that's possible.
So what I'll do is I'll ask the team to consider whether or not there's an easy way of responding to all. Certainly if we've got emails, it makes it easier. If we don't, it will create additional workload, which we can choose to allocate staff time to, but I won't force them to answer right now. What I'll do is I'll suggest we take that away as an action. And if the officers can come back to us once they've reviewed contact details and how viable it would be to have a generic response, go back to the majority, that would be helpful. Okay, we'll go from submission number 67 now through to 90. I'm taking slightly bigger blocks now, team. Many of these submissions were very self-explanatory, which is why we're not commenting on all, just for the benefit of anyone who's watching us online right now. Okay, team. We'll move now on to submissions number 91 through to 110. Okay, team, we'll now look at submissions 111 through to 136. I see some lights have gone on, so I'll come first to Councillor Milmine.
Thank you, through your worship. Submission 111.
111? Yep.
Has just asked for some clarity around their individual rating, if that could be replied to,
Thank you, I
please.
had that noted also. So I'll come now to Councillor Lorcan.
Oh, yes, through your chair, and I agree with Councillor Milmine. I was going to ask that very question, but I'm also looking at submission 112. If someone can contact Mr. Waikari about the fact that he has definitely been heard. He is saying that he's concerned that his priorities are not looked at or heard. We need to confirm to him that we definitely have. Thank you. Observed his. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, We'll move now on to submissions number 137 through to 160. Councillor Milmine.
Thank you. Submission 145. We heard from Mr. Burkhead yesterday.
We did.
Just about that flooding in Dunwoody. Thank you.
Yes, and I think we'll take away that to seek some guidance from the officers as to, I think actually the elected members were interested in understanding the outcomes of previous conversations with them, so we'll circulate that as well. Okay, team, we'll now look at submissions number 161 through to 182. I just note that submission 166 appears to have been submitted to us in error. It seems to be a GST return letter. We might want to inform that submitter. Okay, team, we'll move now on to submissions 183 through to 205. Okay, we'll now go to submissions 206 through to 226. And a number of these submitters actually have submitted to us verbally over the past couple of days. Councillor Milmine.
Thank you. Submission 210. I note that the submitter has mentioned that they asked council officers could their budget be reduced to reflect no increase in the sector they said it could be. I wonder if it's possible to circle back and just provide that submitter with the information we have just been
Yes, he was a verbal submitter today as well. So that was Mr. Livingston. Thank you. Okay, team, we'll move on to the last batch of official submissions, which is 227 through to 235. Councillor Noel-Lustig.
Sorry, back to 214.
That's all right, we can do that.
Yeah, let me just make sure I've got the right one.
Take your time.
This is the PAMPAC. If you could write to them to ask, I got the feeling that they weren't too sharp on their figures yesterday, and possibly they're getting a bit mixed up with the regional council. If we could maybe ask them for information on exactly what rates they are paying, what their increases are, and whether that's regional council or HDC.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll leave it for officers to connect with that submitter, trying to broadly cover what you're talking about, and probably also letting them know that they are in rating area 2, which is not being impacted by the decisions today.
I
I'll
just
come,
interrupt
hang
for a
on,
minute?
sorry,
Okay.
one moment, councillor,
Yeah.
we've got a line. So
Yeah.
I'll come to councillor Daniel first and then I'll come to you, councillor Nixon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just back to 177, and this was Mr. Roll's submission, and we had the cordial with him yesterday regarding some of his questions. I just want to know if we can get that written down and sent back. So he's asked governance questions and questions for council. So if we can get those answered and sent back to him.
Are you talking regarding the copy of the speech that he left with us, councillor?
Yes, so has council demonstrated that the proposed differential methodology is evidence-based, like those type of questions he's asking in the submission?
So I'll just look to democratic support. Do you have a copy of Mr. Royal's speech? He issued it to elected members, and I'm very happy to give you my copy so that they can be used as the basis for, there's some questions on there which I'll talk to you about afterwards if you'd like, just to highlight. No, what the council is asking for is a response to go back to the submitter answering his questions. So we'll just note that and I'll point to them once the meeting's concluded so you know which ones. Good idea though, councillor, thank you. And I'll come now to councillor Nixon.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Are we understanding orders?
Yes, we are.
Oh,
Thank you.
couldn't remember. We got a response from PanPac following my question yesterday, which I think did, explain their situation. I think there's some misunderstanding. I think Councillor Radcliffe, pointed out that there's also some linkage with regional council because it seemed like taking a longer period, the rates increase for PanPac is not that great compared to recent years. It's just great compared to last year. But regional council rates have taken a real jump.
So just seeking some guidance here, councillor, what are you wanting to go back to the submitter?
Really just to point out that it's, to provide the numbers back to them, I think, and explain that it's not as severe as they made out. But we do acknowledge the regional council rates have gone up.
I think it'll be their opinion to decide whether or not it's severe, but yes, we can give back some numbers.
That's fine.
Thank you, councillor.
You know what?
All right, elected members, we had one late submission that came in that was emailed around to everyone from Mr. Barber, Mr. Ray Barber. So just making sure there's no questions or comments regarding that particular submission. And just acknowledging we allowed that late submission. Okay, excellent. Oh, councillor Lorcan.
Yes, through you, Chair. There were two very, I forget the, let me just go back through, sorry, back to 228, Hugh Lambie with Kmart and also Development Nous. Very, very detailed submissions there, which incorporated many different aspects of our targeted rating system and the improvements that they think they need to see in terms of clarity. It would be great if someone was able to get back to them with their specific.
Well, I think what we could do, councillor, is if council's supportive, we could certainly respond to those submitters and say that that information will be passed on to officers for consideration during the rating review for the LTP. If that is what everyone's happy with, I'm seeing nods. That's good.
Thank you.
So that's how we can do that. Thank you. But you're right, some very comprehensive submissions from many actually. Okay, team, if that concludes questions regarding written submissions, that means we are now at the pointy end of this meeting. So we've heard from our submitters, we've read submissions. The tricky bit for us now is we also need to consider these in the context of our first wave of consultation too. We can't lose sight of the messaging we heard from that wave as well. So it is a lot to keep in mind. So we are now moving into the official meeting agenda. So you've got that within your pack. And we are looking at item 5. So item 5 is the adoption of the 2026-27 annual plan. In order to do that, we have to decide what we are doing with the differential rating system. And you will see within the papers that at the moment it reflects two options based on those we've consulted on. One being no change to the differential, and the second option being a modified differential rating system, which is reflected within the papers, one aspect of that being the 2.75. So councillors, I am looking for questions either on this paper if you do have it, although this is a summary paper of all the submissions really, or someone to set a direction, please. And I will give you a moment to find where you need to be. And I will come now to Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, your worship, and through you. So the submitters that submitted to us in person and online mentioned, and I mentioned the officers to confirm this from what we heard, that a rating decrease differential from 3 to 2.75 wasn't material enough to be of assistance to them. Just a yes or no from somebody?
If that is a yes or no answer, yes.
That's
Hello,
a yes
Chief
or no
Executive.
answer.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, I think, yeah, in the main, the submitters were, yes, if in terms of the options presented, 2.75, we'll take that, but don't think it goes far enough to look for further consideration of really.
So in other words, that they weren't, so it wasn't enough for them to move the dial from 3 to 2.75, yep. And I've asked this a couple of times, but I think it's really important. And it's the obvious answer's obvious, but I'll ask it. Did we consult on anything below 2.75 or 3? No, we didn't. So yep, just make that clear. We consulted on the two options, status quo or 2.75. So that leads on through your worship to the next question. Two is not, somebody might like to answer this.
Mr. Smith is sitting behind you if
Is
that's
he?
who you're looking for.
Oh, yes, I am.
He has tried to run away, but we will come up the front.
Yes. So in terms of the is this unknown territory going from 2.7? We haven't consulted on it. Could this lead to some hard questions or worse being asked from the public or anyone that wants to?
I think as soon as you go outside that window, you're importing risk. Going marginally outside the window, that risk is small to negligible. The further you go, the larger that risk gets. Yeah. And it feeds back to the question of, well, how well do you feel people have been given the opportunity to have their say, and how well you understand the range of views in the community. There is no magic number, I can tell you, other than staying within the window where that risk is minimised.
Yeah. But just to repeat, it could, within the bounds of probability, if it was below, like you say, if it was 2.7, it might not be, but if it went to 2.35, it does open the door. More possibility the further we get away from that 2.3, your worship.
Yes, as soon as you go outside the 2.3 to 2.75 range, the risk starts, and the further you go from that range, the greater the risk that you're opening up the decision to challenge.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Nixon.
Just need some clarification. We are discussing the figure that we're not asking questions, are we?
You can ask questions, but yes, I am looking for a direction.
Okay, I'll start, Doc. I believe we should go to the figure that we put out in the consultation, the 2.75, wasn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have a number of reasons for this. In the first instance, it's actually a long time since we set up those percentages, because I was here when it happened back in about 2011 or 12. And there's, in my mind, some uncertainty as to whether they are still strictly the right numbers. I don't have any reason to say they're wrong, but just I raise that issue. Second thing is, and these are just points not all in the right order, we've heard from everybody. Everybody's under pressure at the moment. So no one group, be they domestic or commercial, can claim to be more under pressure than the other. I think everybody is. In my mind, businesses do go broke, and the consequences of business going broke is significant because it reflects right through the whole economy. When an individual runs out of money, that's bad for that individual, but it's not necessarily bad for everybody. When a business goes broke, it is bad for a lot of people. So residential, on the other hand, residential expenditure flows into the business sector. So the two are really connected. I think it's important that we do maintain a vibrant investment environment by whatever means we can, and our options are limited. GST is deductible, and if rates generally are deductible to businesses. So I'm sort of trying to get that into my thinking as well. I do wonder if valuations in the commercial and industrial areas have really gone up by as much as the figures showed. Because my understanding is, everything's getting pretty hard to sell. I know we've been given reasons, but I don't totally accept it. And thirdly, I think we should demonstrate some goodwill. And I think the lesser figure, the 2.75, would actually show a willingness of the council to listen to the people who have submitted and businesses generally. And the cost, it does impose some slight increase on residential options, but most of that seems to be of the order, $20 in Flaxmere, this is a year, 60 in Havelock North, and so on. The numbers are, in fact, not that great. I don't want to give anybody a rates increase, but the reality is the figures are not huge compared to the goodwill I think that we will achieve. And I'd also point out on the, in terms of the submissions we received, whilst 49% favoured option 1, that is no change, 3%. That was if everybody submitted. But if you look at the commercial area, and it was mostly the consultation, extra consultation was with the commercial area, in fact, 70% of them effectively favoured option 2, that is the 2.75%. So, do I move it or do I just make a comment?
You can move it if
Right,
you'd
I'll
like
move the 2.75 and that can become a point of discussion, and we'll see where that goes to.
Thank you, councillor. So that is a mover, but in order for us to have a substantive motion on the table to debate, we need a seconder. Is there an elected member who is prepared to second that recommendation? Okay, team. This is the pointy stuff. This is the crunchy part of governance. So if no one's prepared to second that motion, I'm looking for a mover of something else. So I'm going to come now to Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Yep, Worship, I'd like to move the status quo.
Okay, so would you like to speak to that?
Yep, for my reasons that we've listened to we didn't consult on anything but status quo in the 2.75. We've heard from the submitters that it's not going to move the dial much from them at all. I've asked Mr. Scott a number of times about the potential legalities of going lower to make any difference, and there are some questions about that, if legalities is the right word through your worship to use. And I think everybody around this table feels for the business community at the moment, what they're going through. I'm in business myself. I know how difficult it is at the moment. I've been in business for a long time, about 20 years, and it is very difficult at the moment. I totally understand that. But also, part of my reasoning as well is that residential are also going through difficult times as well, and we saw some graphs which had some stark movements of the residential, and I bump into people walking dogs and they say to me, Michael, our properties have gone up, but our income hasn't gone up. I talked to a young receptionist who's bought a house and saying, even though a little amount goes up, I'm budgeting every dollar. Some people are budgeting every dollar. And and I think everybody around this table will reflect that this is just an absolute difficult situation to be in and to make a decision on. And so that is my preamble.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so we have another mover looking for a seconder. Councillor Milmine.
I would second that. My reasoning is that obviously this is a far from ideal position that any of us are in, largely caused by the delayed QV re-evaluations. I hope that we are never in this position again, and we've had a bit of certainty from QV that they will be providing us with reevaluations earlier, which will hopefully avoid that. I'm really concerned about our business community and the position that they are in, and the growth in the economic space, the CBD. However, we've mainly read from our residential submitters that they're cutting costs on their groceries. This is a real, there's no way that they can absorb any further increase. I care deeply about all our sectors, and I'm really heartened to know that we have committed to reviewing this in the future as part of the LTP, the whole structure. So I know that this is only for 1 year. While it will impact everyone, it is only for a year. So this is why I support option 2. Option 1.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder for an unchanged differential. So that means that is the substantive motion on the table that we are debating, team. Okay, I will check that actually, thank you. So to the mover and the seconder, are you moving all of the recommendations A to G, noting that your G is the first one listed, not the one after or? Yes, I'm getting nods. Okay. All right, so we are now in debate, but I'd just like to remind everyone that debate is one bite at the cherry unless you're the mover. You get a right of reply. So please don't try and speak twice. If you have a question, though, you're allowed to ask that as we go through. Councillor Nolestick.
Thank you, Chair. My view has not changed from the last time this came to this table. And as it was noted, I was the only person that voted that even 2.75 wasn't nearly enough. I really was very keen on sticking with the 2.35. And one point came to me this morning with the guy from Tumu's that all these little businesses, their loaf of bread, instead of costing $4, is now going to cost $5. So they're going to extract out of the pockets of all the residents the money that they need to pay for those rates anyway. So they're probably the urban residents are probably going to be worse off. Yeah, and the thing is, if we have a slowdown, we've already been told that there are projects on hold. There are going to be shops that go broke, and it will take years to recover from this. Thank you.
So you're speaking against the motion on the table? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Nolestick. I'll come now to Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I'd just like to make a comment. I believe if we had the confidence to go to the public that industrial and commercial rights were going to rise as a result of the preliminary reports from QV, I think we would have the confidence to give them an estimate about what those percentages would be, give or take, 20 to 75%, depending on the property. I think had we done that, even though we didn't know exactly, we wouldn't have had the second round of consultation. I think people would have submitted based on that. I'll be foreshadowing a motion if this one fails. That, and the reason, before I mention the motion, is that we had a robust debate on rating back in 2011. And there was a push to get closer to harmonisation, lift the non-urban residential from the likes of 8.1 to 9 for Clive and 7.2 to 8 for the other Kamoana, etc. And at the same time bring down to 2.7. So that was in 2019, 2020. That would have been adopted had we accepted it, but we didn't. That is the most robust consultation, and that is the most robust discussion we've had on this rating since 2011. And my foreshadow would be to adopt 2019 and 2020, which would give relief, 2.7 to the industrial commercial, and it wouldn't affect the residential quite as much as it would lift the non-urban residential. And because we never hear from the people who get the least rate hikes. We only ever hear from the people who get the most rate hikes. and that is the reason. I guess I've finished on that. Thank you. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay, so you're against the motion and you've foreshadowed, if this motion fails, you'd like to move a 2.7, is that correct? I need to come to the officers because that hasn't been modelled. You're shaking your head, councillor. I need clarity on what you're foreshadowing.
We had it on the screen earlier. 2019, what was agreed on for the 2019-2020 year. So it was across the entire rating area, not just the industrial commercial.
I'm going to come to officers to seek clarity on what you're saying, councillor. Officers?
Through you. What was put up on the presentation was the outcome from the review of the rating differential that we would be moving to 2.7 if everything had gone as planned from that 2011. What officers haven't modelled is the rates impact for 26-27 based on a 2.7 differential for the CBD of Hastings. So that's what we would need to go back and redo all that modelling, and it would be unlikely we'd be in a position today to actually have that. So yes, the work was done to prove that was part from the rating review, but yeah, that's not been modelled based on the 26-27 general rates.
Councillor, I will note it is somewhat concerning to have this raised today. The information on the 2011-2012 was provided to us at the first round of consultation meeting, and we have made multiple calls to elected members to raise any additional modelling or information that they would like well in advance of this meeting. Hang on, I'm not done. The staff have not had a chance to model what you are requesting, so we can't decide on that today. It means you can't even foreshadow your motion because we don't have the data.
I did ask for it earlier.
When did you ask for it,
Before
councillor?
we went into consultation as an option.
I'm sorry, before we went out for what
The
consultation?
second consultation on the 2.7 rating.
So the council voted,
Yes, I know.
and so you're putting forward something that hasn't been modelled, which means the motion can't be put forward. It's a moot point. So what I'd invite you to do is to consider what option you would like to put forward that can be modelled and can be decided today, because you've been told the huge implications to the community if we don't strike the rate. So I will leave you to consider that because what you're proposing can't be done today. Mr. Allen, do you have anything to add?
Just one thing.
Thank you.
Your Worship. So it is quite a lengthy process because what you need to approve today is the rates resolution. Within the rates resolution is a whole lot of very, very specific numbers. Those specific numbers need those differentials to be determined so that the model can be run to calculate all those numbers, and then the rates resolution is populated. Prior to this meeting, given that numbers have been talked about, 2.75, Your Worship, has been modelled, and we do have that rates resolution. Even though it's not much of a difference for 2.7, it does change all of the numbers throughout that resolution, and they would need to be changed. So, that point.
So, councillor, is 2.75 something that, or possibly even, I'm going to come to Mr. Allen because I did ask you in advance of this meeting to consider it in case the question came up after reading the recommendations. We've modelled 2.5, haven't we? Is that correct?
Yes, we have 2.75 is already in your resolutions, and we've modelled 2.5.
Yes.
We haven't modelled anything in between those numbers.
So, councillor, modelling that we have available to us that we could make a lawful decision on today is either status quo, 2.75 or 2.5. So that is the information we have available. So I'll leave it to you to consider what you want to do in terms of your decision making. We can't make a decision on something we don't have modelling for. So I just want to make that very clear. So if you want to indicate that you would like to go with a foreshadowing of 2.75 or 2.5, I'm very happy to accept that as chair. But I need you to put forward something that we can actually foreshadow. All right, I'll leave you to consider that. I'll come now to Councillor Lorcan.
Yes, thank you, through your chair. This has been a process, and you would have noticed I've been taking lots of notes. Like I saw, we've been reading and reading and reading, absorbing. So I've written a few things down I'd like to just kind of get my thoughts out. This is kind of my only opportunity, really.
So councillor, you can do that. This is debate, but I do need to be clear. You get one bite at this, cherry, so you do need to state your position and your.
I will.
Okay, great.
I
Go
will.
for it.
So firstly, I want to express my deep gratitude to everyone who's taken the time to submit, to everyone that's reached out privately and everyone that's taken to social media to express their feelings about what's in front of us. Like you all, the desire for a healthy Hastings district runs deep in me. This place has housed me, fed me, healed me, educated me, entertained me, and all I want is for this place to thrive. And we've got to look at what's right and fair, and whether you're a residential, rural, commercial or horticultural ratepayer, the tensions and the trade-offs that we've been put with are real, and this is incredibly hard and a very complex decision. And I feel, as many of our ratepayers feel, that the process has felt rushed and there's been a lack of transparency, and that commercial ratepayers have been boxed into a corner, and that residential ratepayers have been forced into paying more when no one stood up for them when their property values and rates were skyrocketing. And I also want to say something about commercial tenants, you know, the people that lease their premises rather than own them. You know, many of those lessees pass rates, costs through to those tenants. And that means there are people in our business community who are facing these increased costs, and they've got absolutely no ability to object to their property's valuation because they have no ownership stake, and they're the innocent bystanders in the truest sense. And I want them to know that they're seen in this conversation. Adjusting the differential introduced a very raw and confronting image that presents itself across the majority of submissions, both from the commercial and industrial sectors and the residential sector. And that image is of two hands trying to feed their body, and they're both being bitten. This is extra pain at a time when so many of our Hastings households and businesses are really bleeding. Here at the table, the situation we've been put in, the decisions that we have to make affect everyone, including our own families, our own neighbours, our friends who have businesses. And that's why we need a better and more equitable rating system framework, and we've committed to that. But it's also got to be a framework that will weather and adapt to a new multi-regional council makeup, where everything, even including boundary lines, as you mentioned the other day, Mayor, they're all on the table. It's got to be a system that will adapt to rates capping, a system that satisfies, that accounts for the government-mandated local water done well entity, a system that satisfies the demand for greater clarity from both communities about what their targeted rates actually represent, so that real value can be felt in the level of service that every single property receives. A system where the annual plan consultation isn't opened up until the certified property values are known, and most importantly, we need a framework that is solid and can be trusted. As a council, we have committed to doing exactly that alongside policy changes as part of the long-term plan, because this situation, as Councillor Milmine said, cannot be allowed to repeat itself. Strategically, our comms with our ratepayers must be more intuitive and on the front foot. To reach out, to get on the phone, as one of our submitters said, and start conversations. A repeated comment from our commercial submitters was that option 2 is better than doing nothing, but it's not enough. I personally asked for the option of differential 2.35 to be explored in the consultation as an option for the commercial differential, and I still feel that way, but only if our residential, rural and horticultural ratepayers are given all the information they need to see how that'll affect them. One of our HDC's stated objectives is enabling employment and growth, and it's really difficult to reconcile that with a system that's placing such a dramatic additional burden on the very businesses that create employment and contribute to the economic well-being of our district. And yet when households are burdened with increasing rates, they have less disposable income, which impacts dramatically on their ability to contribute to our economic well-being also. Again, two hands feeding one body. They're both being bitten. My direction is for option 2. That's the way I will be, voting against.
Voting against the current motion.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, team. So I will now come to Councillor O'Keefe. If you can turn off your microphone, Councillor Lorcan, thank you.
I'm going with the motion. I've sat through a very difficult time for me. I'm not the most learned of people, but I know hearts and I know relationships and I know hurt when I see it and feel it, whether it's in the commercial or residential. But in 1970, my mum and dad put all of us kids on the back of a B8 pickup truck and came here to Heretaunga seeking fame and fortune. We came out of a 2-bedroom tin shack with dirt floors and boxes for cupboards, where candlelit dinners were the norm. We had no power. And we came here when I said to Mum, where are we going? Where are we going? We had to uplift everything, left our relations, our aunties, our uncles. And she said, we're going to a land flowing with milk and honey. This land has clothed my family, fed it, educated it, chided it, reprimanded us when we needed it. And this land is a magnificent land. It will continue to feed. It's now feeding my great-grandchildren. And I'll always salute Heretaunga for that. I'm going with the motion because it resonates mostly with my heart. Because when that lady stood up there and said, I have to make cuts in my own life, why can't you? And that, as Nick said, he said to her, that was a powerful, powerful rhetoric. So I'm going with the motion for the reasons I've already explained. And this land, despite the hard economic times, this is a land flowing with milk and honey. Let's not ever lose sight of that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Come now to Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor O'Keefe has pointed at me, so I'd better say something. This differential system may have been fit for purpose at some point when it was designed. Since COVID, however, we've seen the residential sector hit hard by rates increases following the last revaluations, and this time we're seeing the commercial and industrial sectors bearing the brunt of it. I'm going to be speaking in support of the motion, not because I think it's a great option, but it is the less worse of two bad options. And I was warned that we would be considering these kinds of options as a council and as councillors. I do just want to say, though, first of all, the centre of my hometown, you might be able to hear that I'm not from here. The centre of my hometown was essentially killed following the GFC by unaffordable commercial rate rises. So I am not speaking from a position where I'm not sympathetic towards the business community and the struggles that they're experiencing. We've heard from them over the last 2 days, and I've heard and appreciated every single word that they've said to us. I share your disappointment, Your Worship, in QV, the process that's been followed there. I think as far as the consultation is concerned, we were set up to fail on that. I also want to express disappointment, and I touched on this with some of my questioning of the submitters over the last couple of days. Disappointment in the situation where, while residential tenants have their rates included in their rents, the same cannot be said of commercial tenants. I'm disappointed in those commercial landlords who are leasing their spaces net of rates, and not accepting the responsibility for that. Enjoying 25% value increases and absolving themselves of the responsibility for effectively being taxed on that windfall. It's not a fair system. I promise the community that we will revisit it, that we will get it right next time. But for now, I'm speaking in support of the motion on the table, which is status quo. Last time was residential's turn. Residential was hit hard this time. I'm sorry, commercial, but it is commercial's turn. And this is, for want of a better expression, the market stabilising itself. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. I'll come now to Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Thank you, Worship. Over the last couple of days, we've heard a number of submitters talk about the process that we coulda, shoulda, woulda. The gift of hindsight hasn't done us any favours. I have heard a lot about the pitting of residents against commercial and industry. As a business owner myself, I am fortunate enough not to have a lease where I am having to pay rates. But what I can say is that business owners are also residents, and we should never forget that, because that's when the debate of who's getting more than the other is flawed. I remember a time, and if we use the term of Councillor O'Keefe, the time of milk and honey, where if you did need to buy a milk or bread, you could look under the seat of your car or down the side of your seat and there would be 50 cents or $1. Businesses and residents no longer find those 50 cents or those dollars. I heard a number of our submitters pleading with us about their businesses, the loss of local businesses and the loss of local employment and the possibilities of liquidation. And I just want to go a bit further by having said the business community and residents are one and the same. The next step would be mortgagee. A lot of them have used their personal residence to fund their businesses. Not all of them. So I am going to speak against the motion on the table and to implore to our council that they are not the business, commercial sector and the residents. They are one and the same people. Kia ora.
Just seeking clarity there, Councillor Teo Skipworth. So speaking against holding the differential where it is, do you have a preference on where the differential would go?
Even given the commentary around the legalities, I would have preferred to have explored 2.35. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Teo Skipworth. Do we have other speakers? Because we still don't have clarity here yet, team, so we do need to hear from more of you, please. Councillor Ross, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Taking into account all the submissions, the impact on residential rates over the years, I'm in favour of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I will come now to Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Worship. To me, when I read the submissions, I felt a clear message of something that needed to change, and we've heard that loud and clear. I feel for how the submissions have come out, in my opinion, is with pitted commercial and residential. And if we think of them as one, I think of the small businesses. My thought process is to remove the big corporations from my mind and think about the small businesses, but also to think about our pakeke, our elderly. I make note of a submission that talks about I have no more to give. I've given a lot already. Businesses and commercials can absorb the costs, but our pensioners can't. So I am in support on that basis of option 1. Motion.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll come now to Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Worship. I too support the motion. We're resilient people here. We've taken hits in our history. 31, and we bounce back. The closure of the works, and we bounce back. This is another hit, but I believe in the people of Hastings. I believe in the business community, and I believe in the residential people to support that business community, and I believe we will bounce back. For me, shops need people to service them who've got $1 in their pocket. And I want to make sure that residents have got $1 in their pocket to go in and invest in those businesses in our city. And that's the reason I'm supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Montepero Hendry.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I've still been flip-flopping right up until this moment, so I've got so much written down, and I'll never articulate it like everyone else will, but here we go. Many commercial ratepayers have indicated that this interim proposed rating differential does not go far enough. Commercial and industrial are incredibly diverse. They appear to be different to a one-size-fits-all rating group. And I quote Submitter 176 and others that I express reservation of my position in all respects. This false dichotomy of money makes money, meaning that many residential ratepayers are also commercial ratepayers, and many commercial ratepayers are landlords to residential ratepayers. Most residents rely on commercial and industrial business, and commercial and industrial business rely on residents. The decision has no non-effect. This puts the entire decision to a state of unease. I genuinely understand how hard it is out there. I am a business owner, I am a resident, I am a mother, and I am a wife. I'm yet to speak to someone not feeling the pinch. I do ponder that had the trend stayed as it had previously, with residents carrying the lion's share, if we would have been having this conversation today, or would the next swing bring us back to this very situation? And that is where I appreciate every single other councillor around this table and what they have said to what we have to do to changing our differentials. So how do I vote and for what? Residents will pay either way. I have heard that today that they will be stealing from Peter to pay Paul. It will be through a rate increase to relieve commercial, or it will be in lessened jobs, potential loss of city vibrancy, and potentially an increase in prices. Those same residents may be the shop owner who will now have to work longer hours. The same residents faced with higher prices. I note that we are going to look at this and all of the differentials, and I really want that to be made clear to everyone with the decision I make today. I'm not sure that a temporary band-aid with reforms in the midst is a go. However, I don't want to my vote being the catalyst for a business closure or a member of our communities turning over their couch cushions, trying to find the additional dollars in this already overwhelming state of play. But I was put here to vote and try to do what is best for most, but aim for all, at least, and the worst shock. This is possibly one of the hardest decisions I've made around this table, and sitting probably up most of the night like everyone else was, I genuinely care. It's a damned if you do and damned if you don't scenario, with no matter what, the residents of Kiratonga are affected. And this is where I flipped backwards and forwards. I genuinely care. This comes with an I hear you and I'm sorry, and I do stand with all residents, but I cannot see another way that remains right. This comes with a caveat that officers will put outcomes around payment plans for ratepayers who I know are going to hurt from this. Budgeting links will be put up on our website and easy to find helplines, please. I understand that this does not find the additional dollars, but I have nothing else to offer today. This does worry me, and anyone can phone me at any time to korero about this decision. So with an emotional stance, and I hope, I vote for option 1. I say this as I take in a deep breath and brace myself for what this may mean for residents that do not know where to find this reprieve that we now surrender. I add that I hope that commercial landlords absorb some of the increase and add to what we had asked our residents to do. I want business owners to know that I've made this decision to vote to try to keep on as many lights in the town. I fear that if we put more rates on residents, that the towns will fall anyway. I fear that if this reprieve is not offered today to the residents, the effect down the line will be more costly to all, noting that I don't want to set a precedence to this. So today I heard that business is business. I've heard the risks of flight of commercial. I'm grateful for what they do for community. I note that this may be the catalyst of a business closure. 9% of commercial properties have submitted to QV, a 25% average wanting a decrease in value.
but I've also heard that residents may not be able to hold the CBD by way of reprieve. So hopefully they can buy or help buy, but they may be able to help by shopping and support. Again, we are in a pickle. Businesses can claim portions of their rates, residents cannot. Businesses and landlords can negotiate lease terms, residents cannot negotiate rates amounts. So with that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montepere Hendry. And just for my own clarity, your words were beautiful. For my own clarity, you're supporting the motion that's on the table. Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to come back to you, Councillor Nixon, and Councillor Corbyn, if you'd like to go first. I'll come to you.
Thank you, Worship. We're between a rock and a hard place. This is a very difficult agenda item. When I heard the submissions, I didn't hear so much about the rates differential. I actually heard about the budget being too high. I heard about our policies, ability to change, manoeuvre. I heard about our consultation process. I think we need to look at all those. They're not part of today's agenda, but I think they were the crux of what we heard. Neither of these choices are good, but on the whole, I go for option one, on the understanding that we have heard the submitters and we will address that in the coming months. I'd also like to add, option one isn't on its own because we do have a recommendation on the targeted rate.
Correct.
And I see some relief in that targeted rate for the Hastings CBD.
Thank you, Councillor. You are correct.
Or not taking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you are correct in saying that recommendation D specifies that council resolves to not charge the Hastings CBD targeted rate for the 26-27 financial year. Meanwhile, E, I need to be clear, resolves to retain the Havelock North CBD targeted rate. That is on request from the Business Association, so that is not a council arbitrary decision. The membership group there has indicated that they would like it retained. So I'll come now to Councillor Nixon, who may speak to the motion that's on the table.
Do it.
You can speak as to where you stand.
Thank you. I think the thing that we're not addressing with our inflexibility, which is what I see, is that many of these businesses around town, you walk in, it's one person sitting in a shop. Effectively, these people are just earning, some of them, wages. I suspect some of them are getting very poor wages. They probably wouldn't work for somebody else for the same amount of money. And so I proposed the 2.75 originally, which wasn't seconded, as really a gesture to the business community that we are listening to them and we are taking into account what they're saying to us. I felt it was a fairly small move. Most of the businesses wouldn't have thought it was nearly enough, but I thought it was a gesture. And so I will be voting against the motion, but I do accept the majority view, whatever it is.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now come back to Councillor Gibson. So I've already let you know that we can't accept a foreshadowed motion of what you proposed. Would you like to speak for or against the motion and change your position?
I will wait to see how they it's lost, so it doesn't really matter what my
Well, your
is.
position matters to the ratepayers, so do you
will
support?
No, I'm not supporting it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, it's my turn. I think I reflect exactly what so many of you already so eloquently said, which is this is an incredibly difficult situation. On one hand, I have seen information from officers which suggests that a previous policy direction suggested that we should move in the direction of 2.75. which is why I was supportive of us consulting on it. I have also heard loud and clear from our commercial and industrial community through their submissions, through personal interactions, and through the verbal submissions we've heard over the last 2 days, that they are hurting. I need to be clear as well, though, that this is not a hurt because we've driven up rates massively on them all of a sudden. This is hurt because a reevaluation has taken place, and it has shifted a bigger slice of the rate pie, which has not changed in size except for that 5.9% average that we have already talked about increasing. It has moved a larger slice of the pie onto that particular sector, and then it has been amplified by the existing differential. The differential is not new. It has been in place for a significant amount of time, and we've actually heard from submitters as part of this process who were part of the decision-making process for that differential. And I understand that they have a different view now as to what should happen. I think greater clarity for me would have come if we had heard a definitive message from our business community that 2.75 would make a meaningful difference to them. However, we've heard quite the opposite. I echo what Councillor Corbyn has said. We have heard extensively from them a desire for a much deeper review of the rating system, not just the differential. Many of them spoke that the differential is only a small part of what they want us to look at, and I support that call. It's why, as a new council, we had already committed before this process to look at a significant rating review as part of the LTP, which gives us an ability to go out to our whole community and have that detailed conversation. As a business owner myself and as a resident, I echo the thoughts that have been shared around it is not pitting one ratepayer against another. That is not what we have done. That is what revals do, unfortunately. And we do need to acknowledge that. I equally want to be careful that, in this case, residential, but also horticulture, doesn't become a shock absorber for a one-off anomaly. I also want to acknowledge that any relief we would have given today, however this goes, in terms of a differential, would be 1 year before we review the entire system. And I cannot ignore the countless submissions we have already heard from our community, our wider community, on how every dollar matters to them right now. And I do hear and understand what our commercial submitters have said to us around the impact on them will be felt in higher prices, which ultimately is felt by residential. All of this is true. In this particular case, because the proposal in front of us has been we have been told by the commercial sector will not make a meaningful difference to them. That they want a deeper rating review, and that is something we are already supporting. I am going to vote with the motion. I'll now come to Deputy Mayor Fowler as the mover for a right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And it's been echoed by yourself and Councillor Corbyn, and I'm just wondering, do we need to legitimise some way that we're going to look at the differentials, or is that just a given? We do not need to add to a recommendation to give the business community some certainty through you. Just asking for clarity on that.
Are you saying some kind of recommendation that commits us to the rating review as part of the LTP? I'll tell you what we're going to do, because this has been quite intense. I'm going to adjourn us for 10 minutes and give the officers a chance to have a think about whether or not there should be some appropriate wording around that. That will give everyone a chance to stretch their legs, and then we will come back, look at those, and then put everything to the vote. Okay, elected members, if you can please take your seats, we'll reconvene in a moment. Okay, team, so over that wee coffee break, the team have been drawing up some recommendation changes just to encapsulate and commit the council, because I know many of you have indicated you're voting the way you are because you are committed to a rating review as part of the LTP. So we want to capture that formally. And that review is going to have to look at the whole system. So it's going to need to look at things like differentials, targeted rates, uniform charges, who benefits from what services, who creates demand, and how we can make the rating system easier to understand and fairer in the current context, with absolute respect to how it was developed in the past, because it wasn't arbitrarily done. So I'll just ask the team if they can bring up those recommendations on screen, and then I'll come to the mover and the seconder to see if that encapsulates what they were hoping. So we'll zoom in and go down to the highlighted area, please. The rest of the recommendations are as they stand within your pages 8 and 9 of the agenda with this addition. So I'll come to the mover first, which is Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Through your worship, ask a question. What does the rating policy cover exactly when you mean that? What will be, look, because we have in mind a very comprehensive look, and we want to make sure that that covers that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Allen.
Through your worship, in crafting the resolution, we didn't want to be, well, we weren't too specific about what elements of the rating policy, particularly that you wanted to review. I think there's a conversation that needs to be had around the table as to what elements of the rating policy you want reviewed, whether it's just differentials, whether it's separately used inhabited parts for commercial properties. You have two elements that have come through quite clearly in the last couple of days, and two elements we knew that we wanted to look at anyway. So anything beyond that, I think it's a conversation for council at a later date, but what we're signalling here is that that review will be undertaken. I think given where we're at in the process with the long-term plan, with simplifying local government, I think that those things need to be taken into account when you look at the breadth of the review for the rating policy.
Deputy Mayor Fowler, are you satisfied with those recommendations?
Yes, as long as that includes looking at targeted rates as well. Do we specifically put in rating policy including targeted rates to be specific?
If you wish, we can have that added in.
Yep.
Okay, we'll get that clarity included. I'll just give them a chance to do that, and then I will come to Councillor Daniel, who I think has a question. But we'll just give the Democratic support
Yeah. Can we just have a quick adjournment of 2 minutes while we just...
Sure.
Yeah,
why not?
sorry.
Let's get this right. Yes. Quick adjournment.
Did you substantially change it?
Okay, councillors, if you can take your seat again now. Thank you. Okay, so the mover and the seconder have been working with democratic support. I'll come now to the mover, which is Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. It gives me actually no pleasure to move this because of the because we've heard the submitters, but I think round the table we have confidence in that we've formalised it with the recommendation up there that we will review its rating policy, and the councillors will sit down and around the table and discuss the elements to review, such as targeted rating, to give the business community that we will be looking at it in depth. And also part of that too, to give the community, is also mentioned about looking for costs. Now that's part of the LTP, which we will be working through that as part of the LTP. We've heard that message as well. So also, your Worship, I also agree it's been made out it's a residential versus commercial. I don't buy into that argument at all. The evaluation system has put these has created the figures which happened to residential last time. It's happened to horticulture, I think, the time before. As a council, I believe that we have given the business community an opportunity to speak. They will undoubtedly have different views on the decision, but we have given them an opportunity to speak, and we have heard them, and also too non-business community as well. So with those safeguards, with that recommendation in place, that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fowler, and thank you for your right of reply. Okay, team, we've all had an opportunity to speak to the motion. We've heard from the mover, we've refined the recommendations. There's now time to put the recommendations. I want to be very clear, we're putting the recommendations as outlined A to F within pages 8 and 9 of your agenda pack. For G, it is the top option. You will see that on screen, and struck out is the or in the second option. So the motion on the table is that there is not a modification to the differential, and we have an addition of H, which formally notes that council will be doing a comprehensive review of the rating system as part of the long-term plan process, which starts this year and concludes next. Right, on that basis, I'll check that no one has any further questions. I just want to make sure we're 100% clear. Okay, on that basis, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Yep. Thank you. Okay, everyone who's against, would you like your votes recorded? Okay, can you please keep your hands in the air so that democratic support can note down your names? Thank you, that's recorded. That is carried. And I know that no one is celebrating around this table because there was no decision then that would end in celebration. Okay, team. We're now moving on to item 6. And I am going to come to the front table just to very quickly explain item 6, especially for those of you who are new around this council table and what this paper actually is. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Now that we've adopted, the council has adopted the annual plan, this is actually putting into motion so we can then go and collect the rates to support and fund that actual plan. So this decision is very much an administrational decision. There is a lot of words in here because we've got to detail out all the various rates that we are then getting approval to go and then go to the community and get. So all it is now putting into action the decision that was just previously taken. Now, as we talked about before, there are actually 2 recommendations in the paper, so we are focusing on adopting from pages 101 to 108 and striking out pages 109 through to halfway down 116.
I'm just going to give elected members an opportunity to do that. I think I jokingly said the other day in a meeting that the recommendation before us, I think it was around bus stops, was the longest one I'd ever seen. I may have been proven wrong. So just bearing in mind, elected members, based on the decision we have just made, all recommendations from page 109 onwards are struck out. They are not what we are looking at adopting. It is the recommendations starting on page 101 and going through to 108. That way, sorry? Oh, A and B, yeah. So, elected members, as has been outlined by the staff, this is really just an administrative pulling together of all the decisions we've already made. On that basis, I'm very happy to move this from the chair, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. I will accept Deputy Mayor Fowler, thank you. Right, I'll open it up for questions. I'm largely hoping there won't be, because we have fulsomely looked at this over the last 2 hearings. This is comprehensive. We're not in a position to change our rating policy on the fly. This is simply pulling it all into effect. Okay, on that basis, would anyone like to debate? Otherwise, I'll just put the recommendations as they're outlined. No, in which case I am going to put the recommendations. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Well, that team brings us to the conclusion of the 2026-27 annual plan process. It has been quite unprecedented. I would like to acknowledge that particularly those of you who are newly elected members, you have just gone through not just 1 round of consultation on this annual plan, but 2. You are in a very good position now for our long-term plan. So I will take the silver lining out of that. I would like to thank the community who has taken the time, not once but twice, to submit to us, who have carefully considered their views and have shared them with us, and to those who have taken the time as well to come in and verbally submit to us. It's incredibly powerful, and I in particular acknowledge the number of submitters who came into this room feeling quite overwhelmed by standing in front of us and did it with such a genuine spirit. Many of them said that they didn't think they were as skillful as other submitters, but actually it's about us hearing directly from our ratepayers and those we represent. So it is an absolute privilege to have had them in this chamber and to have read the hundreds of submissions we have. So to our community, thank you. I can see that our Councillor O'Keefe has pulled up the guitar, so I suspect he is volunteering to do our closing karakia and waiata. Councillor O'Keefe.
First of all, can I say what this has done for me personally, it brought out the magic that's domiciled in every heart here. I've never seen that in this council chamber before. It was beautiful. It just showed that around this table they care. They genuinely care. The officers, right across the board, and I thank you all for that. You have all risen in status in my eyes. so God bless you all. We'll have a prayer and then we'll sing with, finish off with Tūtira Mai Ngā Iwi, which is bringing the people together. But I'll say this, may when you return to your loved ones this evening, may when you caress your pillow, you'll have both eyes closed, you'll have peace of mind, and you'll be able to say to yourself, look in the mirror, look at your loved ones and say, darling, dear, today I served our people to the best of my ability, and I will continue to love them and serve them as long as God gives me strength. Amen? Amen. Tūtiro mai ngā iwi, tātou, tātou, torongo tika. Tūtiro mai ngā iwi, tātou, tātou e, mai haku mana matanga, e te aroha, e ngā iwi, kapatahi, ki a kotahira. Tato, tato, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray.